Hey gang, welcome to the first installment of the Pride podcast. It's on A Star is Board. I'm Keith Weiss.
I'm Mariah Cameron.
And our first guest is Michael R. Jackson, and he's one of my favorite artists that I've discovered in the past year. He created A Strange Loop, which had its world premiere at Playwrights Horizons last summer, nearly a year to its first rehearsal. Michael won the Pulitzer Prize for drama for A Strange Loop.
There you go.
Yes. How are you during all this? And things are just kind of really changing out there. It's sort of a revolution outside right now.
Yeah, but the thing I've sort of been telling people for myself is I have a roof over my head, I have food in my refrigerator, I have relative financial stability, and I have my health. So I'm good.
I'm grateful we have life to, make something out of this time and or not. Maybe you're making just rest out of this time. Maybe this time is just for finding yourself and healing. I know that I've experienced quite a bit of that. So yeah, I think it's very on point, I guess, or even on brand to count your blessings right now and be grateful.
I wanted to ask you, Michael, because you just have been working with Playwrights Horizons for the past year. And
also Page 73. They were in association with Page 73 Productions.
What is Page 73? Is that Barbara Whitman?
No, Barbara Whitman is a commercial producer who was optioned A Strange Loop. Page 73 was was Playwrights' partner on doing the show along with Barbara, who their mission statement is to help playwrights get their first off-Broadway debuts. So they're more of a downtown company. The artistic director is Michael Walkup, and he and Barbara together brought A Strange Loop to Playwrights Horizons. And then Playwrights Horizons and Page 73, with some help from Barbara, produced the musical.
How did you meet Mike?
I met Mike because my director, Stephen Brackett, Stephen had directed another one of Page 73's productions like a season or two earlier. And Stephen felt that that Page 73 might be able to help produce the show at some point when we were still trying to figure out where we could do it.
Yeah, because you started it out at Musical Theater Factory, if that's my
Well, I mean, the real momentum for it began at Musical Theater Factory, but I had begun writing it many, many years before that, though it was in another form at that time.
Right. You started it at 21 years old, right?
Yeah, 21, 22, yeah.
And I'm sure it's gone through many edits, but I'm sure its actualization when it all fit together. 21-year-old, you probably couldn't even imagine.
Not even a little bit. I wasn't even trying to write a musical at that time. It was just a monologue that I wrote just for a thinly veiled personal monologue for myself.
When I sit down to write something, even if it's a response to some jerk on Twitter, I find myself just just typing my entire life away. Yeah, and then I have to edit, of course. Right. But just the overflow of feelings when you're when you're having an inner crisis, and there's also an outer crisis going on.
That's right.
The way you see and operate through that crisis is just different. So
and that outer crisis, when I first started writing that piece, which at that time was called Why I Can't Get Work, the outer crisis in America at that time was September 11th.
Wow.
It was 6 or so months after that had happened.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. And that was the environment of the world.
You were basically in your early 20s when 9/11 happened, and that's so surreal. The entire institution of safety in New York was just overturned completely. It's are we safe? The not knowing. It's kind of right now.
Yeah, although that was oddly, for me at least, more orderly than this.
Ooh,
it was a very different. Had a very different flavor to it than this moment.
Is it very different?
This is also pre-social media.
Right.
So
part of it.
It's the way we communicated information and learned about things was through each other and maybe through the news on TV, but there wasn't just instant, constant. Information.
Barrage.
Which to be honest with you, when I look back on that time, I'm so grateful for it, given the number of crises that have happened in the world since social media began, and the way our brains are wired to just react to it, and now we like it's inescapable. It's almost like to take yourself away from it is almost to like deprive yourself of utility. It's almost like you're turning off your electricity or like your water or gas in some ways.
That is
which I think is unfortunate, but that's right.
All we have is our security and the little world that we have around us, and once it starts to get interrupted by other things, it sort of rattles our fragility a little bit, and you're seeing that in a lot of white people now.
Liz Phair just said something a while ago on Twitter that a lot of people dragged her for, but I actually appreciated it. She said, social media used to be what I used to get away from the world, and now the world is what I use to get away from social media. And I just think to me, that's real.
I get that. I feel like I feel like more people than maybe they just can't admit it. I'm sitting here trying to understand how that's controversial.
Because the person was like, look at you and your white lady privilege. And I was like, shut up. Actually think deeply about what she's actually saying.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, it's fair that, like, that's a fair assessment. You can always tell a white lady, look at you and your white lady privilege. It doesn't matter. You know, she could tell you the price of the bread in the store. And you'd be like, wow, privilege. But, and you'd be totally justified. But like, I also see the apparentness of her tweet. It's very apparent that like social media has become, you know, somewhere where you do tread lightly. You're not really always going on social media to talk to friends, you know? Not all of my
go on social media to lose friends.
Yeah, low key.
Yeah.
Like how many friends have you lost? Or have you been like, fuck you.
How dare you?
Friend anymore? You said something I don't like.
Unfollow me. Unfollow me.
Unfollow me. If you don't believe if you believe this, then I hope you burn in hell. Drag you through the street and lick up your blood because you not have the right beliefs.
Like, how could you even think that?
We all have done it. We've all done it. I've been on Facebook since 2007. When it just said like "is" in the box, and you like,
oh yeah,
and then you'd be like bored or whatever. It was like so primitive, and it came from that to like, if your feminism is not intersectional, then kill yourself.
Literally throw yourself out the window.
You know what I mean? Die in a fire. You know, like that kind of, and I just think that like we need to reflect on that, on like just what it is to use this to do that, and what effect that has on us and on our brains and on our ideas of friendship and relationships and like truth and reconciliation and like just everything, in my opinion. I don't know how we got on this topic, but...
No, but I love it. I'm like, let's keep going.
No, because we didn't have social media in 9/11. I believe that's how we got here. But I will say, something that Mariah, you even said, was that social media is what's keeping people together right now. And you know what? I'll admit, I was part of the stupidity of last Tuesday. A week ago today, on June 2nd, a bunch of people, and it was all races, everybody united together in the ignorance of putting a black tile on their feed, and it blocked all of the information that people needed for the protest.
How could anyone have known? I saw an Instagram post of this woman trying to like scold people about that and explain, and I'm like, I literally don't understand what you're talking about. So like, I don't blame people for misinformation for like doing the black tiles, because I'm like, it wasn't clear.
Of course.
Literally wasn't clear.
Right.
It's happening so quickly and so like haphazardly. There's no organization. It's like, it's hard to do, and then you feel bad, and then you want to say something, but then you say something, and then people are like, we don't need to hear from you right now, but then they're like, but you need to speak up, but then like, you need to be out in the street, but then if you get on the street, why are you here? And then like, because it's so many cooks in the kitchen that it's like, wait, we're all in the kitchen, there's nothing to eat.
We're just gonna poison each other.
Right.
We're gonna poison ourselves.
So I don't blame you. That whole black tile thing was so confusing. Like, Because it was two different things were happening at the same time.
That's the problem. So you had two different movements literally converging on this day. So you had the original purpose of it, which was actually to, amplify Black voices in the music industry, which was like two Black women were like, okay, well, we need to, have this hashtag, where the show must be paused so that we can talk about Black issues. And that was, a big part of why this was started. And then you had the idea of it, which was, just post the Black tile, everything should be fine, was, literally co-opted, by white folks attempting to be like, look, we're trying, and it's like, this isn't trying. A lot of times the intention gets fed back into the idea of white supremacy so that now it looks like something we're comfortable with, and it looks like something we can control. Right. So I think that was the confusion I was feeling was exactly that. Like, you don't get to tell people how this movement goes. And when you do, this is what it looks like. When you do co-opt the movement, this is what happens. You have now, everyone is just like, fuck it, I'm not trying to do anything.
And for me, what was just confusing is so I think I picked up on the fact that the two women at Sony.
Yeah, that eventually, around noon, everyone saw that.
But, who was organizing the second thing? Where did that come from?
I know the two women and a lot of the spokespersons for them and people who were speaking for them were saying that it literally was just like, people were seeing the Black tiles and white folks were like, something I can do that doesn't take, anything away from me.
Right, but who was...
And it turned into Blackout Tuesday.
But where did Blackout Tuesday come from?
Right. No, I think there was an actual Blackout Tuesday a few years ago, and they happened to fall on the same day.
Did people automatically knew to do that? Or did some influencer say, hey guys, it's Blackout Tuesday, and was that person white? Were they Black? Who was it?
I don't know who it was. I do know it was an influencer though, and I do know it was someone who was basically like, last year on this Tuesday, we blacked out. A few years ago on this Tuesday, we had a Blackout Tuesday.
I think I know what you're talking about. I
remember posting a black square and being like Blackout Tuesday a long time ago. And I think someone was like, we need to bring that back. We need to silence the socials and blah, blah, blah. So
I just find it all very confusing. I mean, no matter what, who made a mistake, who corrected the mistake.
That's why movement is not a trend. That's why movement should never be a trend.
Right. Yeah. And I guess I sort of just question how these movements are to function on a platform that itself is sort of inherently white supremacist itself. You know what I'm saying? The tech is not like our friend.
But we're trying.
Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey are not our friends. They're literally making billions of dollars off of our misery, despair, and confusion. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I sort of have begun in my old age to back away from something like the Black squares, no matter what its intention, because it's all playing out on this platform that has done almost nothing but cause destruction and confusion in the world and misinformation. Yeah. And it's hard, because we each get our little platforms to have our voices and our identities and our individual points of view. But it's all being put into an algorithm, and who knows how many people actually see it, and unless it goes viral, and then and then it's all been used to sell you things.
Right. At the end of it, it's just capitalism.
It's just capitalism, but then we don't talk about that. But then it's just I just noticed how even when I'm on my Mac, I go to open a new tab, and the new tab always goes to the Apple page. And at least as of yesterday, it was a message from Tim about racism. What is Tim Cook going to tell me about racism other than to buy another computer or a phone? I'm actually in the process of buying a new phone. In order to do that, I have to read a message about Tim Cook talking about racism.
I think in the last episode we were talking about how is it that these billionaires, how is it that we expect them to have the answer for these things just because they solved how to get a car into space, or just because they figured out how to,
advertising. I used to work around the advertising industry
PR
20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. It's just PR. Folks are deep diving onto the internet, into like Black activists' feeds, just to get a script for how they should react to this moment, like verbally, and then they're coming back with like, in a week or two, it'll be business as usual. That's when the message is going to become either very, very clear or completely misconstrued.
Layla Saad, who is the writer of a book that I'm reading right now, said that this is not just a moment, this is a time, right? And when we get into June, when we get into like Pride Month, we always find ways to let corporations sell us their notion of pride, or their notion of, now it's Black Lives Matter. They've co-opted Black Lives Matter. And what I fear is that the movement that started it is going to lose its message to corporations. And I don't want to be any part of that.
And I guess, like, you're the young people, and I'm the old fogey.
You keep saying that, but I never even really thought that about you.
No, but I'm saying it. Like,
okay.
I guess my question to you, because I just feel like I like being able to talk to like younger generations about their perspectives on things, because like I'm figuring out, like I feel like I'm at an age where I'm now questioning everything that I ever believed.
Yeah.
Right.
And so like I'm actually asking myself questions even about Black Lives Matter. Not like the issue of like whether there's state violence or anything, but I am asking myself like deeper questions about capitalism. Mm-hmm. And how, and I'm just wondering about like how you all feel about, like, when you think about racism and when you think about capitalism, do you think of those two things as being inextricably linked, or are they two separate issues? And like, how are you thinking about those things in terms of like your own lives, and in terms of like what this moment is? I keep just looking at the material conditions that underlie it. Mass unemployment, a global health emergency, government malfeasance, a crazy president, in my opinion, a completely inadequate Democratic nominee. All of those things, like the fact that people have been stuck at home for 11 weeks. All of those things have been happening, and then yet this state violence happens again. Mm-hmm. It's no different than all of the other times it's happened. There's these underlying conditions that are different than any other time that sparks. And the thing that people are like trying to do with varying success, like Minnesota talking about defunding its police, that's a good thing. Right. But like, what does that mean in the context of capitalism? There's still corporations, lobbyists, there's all these things. Capitalism is still exploiting people, exploiting labor.
I'll tell you how I sort of see this, and I'm funny enough, I'm wearing his shirt, whether you like him or not. Chappelle has been always a guy who I look to for answers. I know he's not like completely perfect, but his circumstances and the way he handled power were pretty important to how I see my role in contributing today. So if we're talking about capitalism and racism, I try to take it from my theater world that I'm in now, right? So if somebody has done something to hold people down, the answer is to defund them and maybe reallocate those funds. And if we're talking about how that works, it's much more about standing united against that front and asserting yourself and finding that compromise. Because We can talk about defunding the police all we want, but what it's going to come down to is what their compromise is going to be. And maybe they'll just back down and be like, fine. But if I know anything about people that are of the state order and are law and order people, it's that they cling to their power and they cling to their institution. So I am
They're
seeing,
done for their religion, you could say.
and to their religion. It almost is a religion in some ways.
Yeah,
Um,
it really is.
Racism and capitalism being intrinsically linked in this country,
Mm-hmm.
undeniable. That is an undeniable fact.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't put the name racism, that was during the Spanish Inquisition that was introduced.
Okay.
Race didn't, the word race didn't exist until it existed as raza in Spanish, and spread as a way to separate people, because we couldn't,
like a virus,
just like a virus. It spread.
Somebody needs to make that their book title or their dissertation.
Like a virus. That's a good one. And we have American racism, which literally was just like, we are going to capitalize and capitalize and capitalize and capitalize racism. And we're going to capitalize everything under it. Like everything. We're going to put a value on everyone. Mm-hmm. We're going to put a value on every single thing. And until objects and humans have been conflated into one thing, we're going to find a way to just literally value and devalue things based on generational exploits to come. So like, my kids can do exactly what I did to get in power, and what my parents did, and what their parents did, and what their parents did, which was, a constant and necessary oppression of people who don't look like us, to continue to be exacerbated. The basis of the construct rather of race needs capitalism, but capitalism in this country also needs race. Mm-hmm. In other countries too. What I would like to see more of in the future is more people acknowledging that there was something before capitalism and there's going to be something after, and being open and understanding and honest, and also willing to explore that. And maybe if it works for, if it actually can restructure what we're seeing, maybe we can enact it. Who knows? What I do know is that there was a way before capitalism. Mm-hmm. There was an African way before capitalism, mm-hmm. where hierarchy, depends on race. And I think if we can destroy hierarchies and dismantle power structures, and I'm going to be done in a minute, yeah. We will have, okay. We'll get somewhere that is, we'll get to an idea of like maybe a more hierarchical, expansive system that doesn't exploit the earth, that doesn't exploit, and we're not thinking about how race and capitalism and so has transferred to destroying the planet. We're destroying the ground we walk on, literally. And she'll be here when we're gone.
You bet you will.
There will still be an earth.
And she's witnessed multiple revolutions.
Yes, she has. Yes, she has.
The dinosaurs fell. Like, she's been here.
The whole time.
She's been here since the dinosaurs, and she'll be here for the next.
Gaia knows.
Gaia knows.
Yes. I wanted to ask you, Michael, about, in the midst of this revolution, there's a lot of institutions that are examining themselves, like I said. So you've had some experience with different institutions. Playwrights gave you that, maybe that juice that your voice deserved. But where do you think there's room to grow based on your experiences? Not just with Playwrights, but like with theaters beyond. We're seeing like Marie Cisco. I don't know if you saw that spreadsheet. There's a spreadsheet going around called Theaters Not Speaking Out that started. And this woman, Marie Cisco, started it on a Saturday night, like 2 weeks ago. And she got up in the morning and there were just thousands of theaters that were put on this list.
Right. But there was something that happened immediately after that. So this list goes around, theaters not speaking out, theaters start speaking out and putting up statements. And then right after that happens, people on social media start going, the only reason you spoke out is because we sit around a spreadsheet.
Exactly right.
And so again, I just would ask us all to, every once in a while, take a look back at the whole picture.
Make a beat.
So like, what does that mean to make a demand, have that demand met, and then say that that demand is not, that the response is not good enough? Something about that makes my Apple color wheel spin.
Exactly. I mean, that's why you ask so much of your performers, your stage managers, your interns, and you ask them to examine themselves because you see them as earlier on in their career or lesser power then. And what's really coming to fruition is you totally said this. You said this in the LA Times.
Well, I just said, because they asked me what kind of theater I want to see after this. And I just said, COVID-19 has exposed all long-standing and pre-existing inequities in our world. And that it's like we're walking into a kitchen late at night, flipping the light switch on, and seeing every surface covered in roaches. But in this time, instead of the roaches skittering away, they just stare back at us defiantly. And so the theater that I'm interested in seeing, or some of the theater I'm interested in seeing on the other side of this, is theater that explores the history, perhaps self-implicating truth about the nature of that infestation.
Yes.
Like, I think it's very interesting that, like, right before the pandemic forces it all, at least New York City, but certainly other places to begin these quarantines, that right before that, we were having this presidential primary where a chief thing being debated was whether there should be universal health care or not. And Joe Biden wins that debate. And then immediately, boom, global health emergency hits the planet. All these people are getting sick and they have to go to the hospital. Who pays for it? That's the question.
Yeah.
The people who are dying.
I was talking to a friend of mine and she was like, it's almost like the universe is giving us a pop quiz. And it's saying, if you fail this pop quiz, you're really not going to be ready for the real test. That as bad as all of this is a pop quiz.
It is.
Okay, you don't want to take care of your people? I'm going to set an event where I take all of their jobs away overnight. Their income. People suddenly stuck at home. Mm-hmm. And people have been saying this for years, that like most people don't have $400 for an emergency. Boom. Yep. People stuck at home. Who's going to pay the rent? Cancel the rent. We can't cancel the rent. You have to figure out how to pay the rent. Okay. Can we have a stimulus? Well, we'll give you $1,200. Oh, I need a small business loan. Okay, we'll just throw money into the streets and you all can kind of catch it if you can. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely. Like, this is the test for global warming, too.
Before the pandemic hit, we were debating all of these issues about income inequality and healthcare, and suddenly an event happens where all of those issues are like on the table. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when you have, I forget what the unemployment number is. Like
13% right now?
Is it 13%? Boom, 13% unemployment. What are you going to do? People getting sick, hospitals overrun. Who's going to pay for it? How do we deal with food? The people who are killing all the animals and like slaughtering them so we can eat, they're getting sick because they're too close to each other. What you gonna do? Boom! The undocumented workers who like get our tomatoes and our fruits and our vegetables working like animals to like ensure that like the grocery stores stay stocked up, but ICE is still willing to snatch them out and deport them. All these things are like suddenly it's like pop quiz. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? There's another problem. There's another problem. There's another problem. And then they pull $2.3 trillion out of their couch after they spent all of these years telling us we can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. And it's right there. And there's still tons left.
I feel like there's not enough people saying it in this way. I think I really, really want to highlight the idea of this being like the biggest test and the biggest failure of a test of a political system in the last, I want to say 200 to 300 years, maybe. Mm-hmm. And like we've been tested in very small ways, like the sturdiness of this system has been tested in many different ways, and history belongs to the victors, right? So because it's the folks constantly failing to listen to us that are telling the story of how they won, we're gonna keep having failures on failures on failures leading up to this pivotal moment where now we're on a worldwide, it's like the SATs. Humanity is taking an SAT right now, and we are royally screwing it up.
Our rich moms can't pay someone to take them for us.
Exactly, man. That's what it comes down to, that the people who are our elder statesmen, they don't know what to do anymore because it's far past. My parents are not going to examine their racial prejudices.
And also our leaders,
better.
Nancy Pelosi is worth over either 20 or 40 million dollars.
Why?
I didn't know that.
Yes. Look, like, you can look it up. Every single person in the House or in the Senate, well, I think it's more on the Senate side, their net worth is like $5 million or more.
$120 million.
Yeah, like something like, I knew it was crazy than that. So it's like,
yeah.
like I think like you started, like, I feel like Elizabeth Warren is like at the low end at like maybe like 5 million. I think I feel like Bernie Sanders might be like 2 million, and then like it goes all the way up to like
the cheapest millionaire.
Like it goes all the way up to like hundreds of millions of dollars. Like that woman, Kelly Loeffler, the Georgia senator, who did those weird illegal like stock things.
Right.
And like is basically gonna get away with it. What does that mean for the rest of us?
They don't speak for us at that point then. They speak for their platform.
And also Citizens United says that their money is speech.
So we have to make our own.
It totally makes me angry. I like that George Floyd was killed in the way he's killed. It's hard, like all of that's horrible. Ahmaud Arbery is horrible. Tony McDade is horrible. Breonna Taylor is horrible. All these police killings are horrible. But like, the police don't work for themselves. They are soldiers defending a castle that has many kings and queens in it. And so I'm just curious, like, when we begin talking about that. Like, I was talking to a friend of mine today on a walk that, like, what if Occupy Wall Street didn't happen in the 2010s? Could you imagine this moment right now where it's a pandemic and then people do Occupy Wall Street now? And if not, why is that? Why does it have to be about sort of our angry feelings about state violence toward Black people, and not necessarily like our anger toward a government that has been plundering wealth away from its citizens for decades? Like, could you imagine protests that were like Occupy Wall Street kind of protests that were rooted in like financial issues that like lots of different peoples, like a racial coalition, could gather around? Because while absolutely Black and brown people had borne the brunt of it, lots of money has been taken from the citizens of this country. Mm-hmm. And so that's something I just have been thinking about. I'm just like thinking quite a lot about capitalism. And like every time like a reporter or some person asks me like a question about how I feel about the events of the day had to do with racism, I'd start talking about capitalism. Because to me, the two are
interdependent.
There was a doll that goes, the commercial would go, kid sister, wherever I go, she's gonna go. And that's how I feel about racism and capitalism. I feel like racism is the kid sister to capitalism. And they're like twins that came out of the mother's vagina like 2 minutes apart.
Literally. It was fast. It wasn't like, oh, capitalism. oh, racism. Let's put them together. No, they literally were born after each other. They were, and their mother is.
That's the real question. Who's the mother? We need to get Gary Coleman to find out. Because capitalism is like an inherently exploitative system. It needs bodies in order to make a profit. Who do we make a profit off of? Oh, those darkies. Those Africans. They can do it. Let's get those migrant laborers. They can do it. Oh, let's get those Chinese folks to make a railroad for us. Now let's pass NAFTA and we can pay them over there to do it even cheaper and put all our people out of work because we need to make a profit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you are out of work is when you wind up making the most rash decisions, and having to make serious decisions in a matter of moments because and you could lose everything.
And the fact is, the people in charge of all of these institutions who birthed capitalism and racism have no idea what it means to sacrifice.
Correct.
Nearly as much as the people who they throw on the railroad.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Sorry to be blunt. There's just so many times that I've seen people walk into a room and take the space like it's rightfully their own and nobody else's to claim. And it's disgusting. And I'm sick of it, man. I don't want to have to worry about having to go back in time, because 2016, that was 12 steps back. So that's what Michelle Obama said. Sometimes history has to take 2 steps back. And I take it on as a responsibility of the people who haven't had to worry about it to finally say something and do something about it.
I have questions for Michelle Obama.
What are your questions for Michelle Obama?
Michelle Obama
Lemon has them too.
What does it mean for you to embrace George W. Bush and say that he's your friend? What does it mean for you and your husband to, in this last couple of years, to buy a $15 million mansion at Martha's Vineyard? What is it like? And in these moments of great unrest, what is your message to people who are suffering economically and socially? I know you all are very nice people. You have a great deal. You have beautiful daughters. You have great examples of being fine and upstanding. You have your deal at Netflix, and maybe you'll make some great documentaries or movies or content or whatever. But what is your legacy now? And do you all at all contribute to some of this decline by some of the policies that your husband implemented in being so friendly with corporations? I think this is a very painful thing to talk about because Barack Obama was such a hopeful symbol, and clearly I would give anything for a president that was as that calm and smart and not crazy like Donald Trump. But I'm also I think about our foreign policy. It has not really changed.
Nope.
We're defunding the police in Minnesota, maybe. Can we defend it overseas? Bigger than just, George Floyd was killed just like Emmett Till was killed. Because even through that, there were economic systems that undergirded all of that. And there was plunder from the state, and the state enshrining violence in the prison system. And all in trying to sort of preserve slavery under another name.
What you were saying about Obama contributing is fascinating because one of MLK's, I think the letter from Birmingham, he talked about
white moderates.
Yeah, the white moderates, and how it's more toxic to be lukewarm than it is to be outright disgruntled and racist because
Yeah, and it's not just white moderates at this point, frankly. If you follow me on social media, over the last few months, I keep repeating this phrase that Jim Clyburn made when right before Biden won South Carolina. He said, "We know Joe, but more importantly, Joe knows us." And then South Carolina Black voters voted overwhelmingly for Biden. And people tried to turn that into this thing of, oh, well, Black voters just love Joe, blah, 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 blah. But I was like, wait a minute, don't infantilize Black voters. These are actual voters with like concerns, and they're moderates. They're moderate Democrats, no different than white moderates. I mean, certainly they've been through the struggles they've been through, and but they're people who are citizens, who are voters, who are making a calculation about which direction the country wants to go in. And right now, the message is we just must get rid of Trump. Biden keeps saying this thing about I want to restore the dignity of the nation, which is not a material value. It's just an optic. It's that Donald Trump is doing incredibly materially destructive things, but the things that like I mostly hear people talk about him are optics. Like if he were more well-behaved, if he were as chill and cool as a cucumber as Obama, I feel like a lot of people, especially these elites who are like on CNN and MSNBC and on Twitter with their blue checks that go so crazy, they would just be like, oh, he sucks, but they wouldn't be like as up in arms about him. Right. And I just think that we need to like examine why that is. But I'll just say that like these voters in the South, many of them are just moderates. They're just moderate Democrats. They're people who've been Democrats since God was a baby. Mm-hmm. And that's important to them. So why not treat them like that as opposed to these magical Negroes who are here to save, America from itself via Joe Biden, who is, Barack Obama's main man or best friend or whatever. Don't insult their intelligence or their personhood by placing those narratives there.
It's just been a lot of like, wake up, Black people, as if like folks don't have genuine concerns that you, liberal white person, are not actually even listening to. Mm-hmm. I'm just supposed to always listen to you, right? Like I'm supposed to trust that your education was Afrocentric enough for me to get some value out of this conversation.
It was not.
Honestly, I was graduated with Black Studies, but also unless you walk in my shoes, unless you've experienced being Black and being, evangelical and being in this intersection of identities and living like this, you're not gonna be able to, even if you just try to respect it. If you're not respecting that even, you're not going to get across to me, your big idea, because I have big ideas too. And how dare you shit on them just because you think yours are better? Because of what? Why is yours better? Why is it? So I have to, I definitely want to keep going in this vein. And I guess in the last 5 minutes, we can talk about actionable, and maybe this is another podcast, actionable ways to do the imaginative and self-implicating work of theater in these times. What are ways we can do theater now?
The truth of it is that right now the theater is closed. So like, physically, but like for me personally, like this is a moment of introspection and of learning and listening and like thinking and like that. Like, so I don't feel a pressure to be writing productive and creative. That's me. There are other people who like, they need to write their way through this or whatever. Like that's them. Mm-hmm. But I guess because of the kind of writer I am, I think of myself as like a student of human behavior and sociology, kind of an amateur sociologist and political science theory person, like all of those things. But I'm an artist first and foremost. And like for me, theater is most powerful when it's, just putting the mirror up to the world and reflecting the truth back. So how we do theater now, it's going to depend on you. Like if you feel like you need to do Zoom plays, do Zoom plays. Yeah. If you, feel like you need to make audio plays on, you know, and podcasts and those things, and do that. For me, theater is about people gathering together in a same space to have a shared experience in person.
Right.
I'm content to go into my like introspective place where I'm just taking in life so that I can write later.
Yeah.
I mean, I am writing a little bit because I have
You're a writer.
To answer your question is like make the theater, like how do we do theater now is you just do theater now if that's what you want to do.
I just wanted to say really quick that I know you're working on this amazing piece called White Girl in Danger, and I grew up watching soap operas. And basically the reason since I was 11 years old, One Life to Live.
One Life to Live!
One Life to Live!
I wanted to write
family.
That was the show I wanted to write for. I loved One Life.
Who is your favorite characters in your generation of watching it? Because I know, I mean, it changes.
I didn't really start watching it until like the late 90s into college, because I watched Another World first and then it got canceled, so I started watching One Life to Live. My favorite characters were like, I mean, I loved Vicky and Dorian, and I loved like Blair and Max, and I loved like
I love the Danger. I love Todd. I love Todd Manning. Love to hate him.
Todd Manning is like one of the most incredible and fucked up characters in all of soap opera history.
Yeah. Wrote the coattails of the Anita Hill hearings. They wrote that with Marty Saybrook.
I knew about that storyline, but I wasn't watching the show when that happened. Did they weave the Clarence Thomas hearings into that?
I'm pretty sure, because it was, I mean, I think it was him and Kevin Buchanan, and they had done that to Marty Saybrook. And
you can actually go back and watch a lot of this stuff on YouTube. Like, the soap fans have put so much of it online. Like, it's endless.
It inspired me as a storyteller, though. Like, I was 11 years old, running around making One Life to Live stories on, like, spaceships with my fucking Justice League action figures, making, like, Todd Manning and Vicky Lord, like, scheming and all that. It's just, I'm
impressed with it.
And Ryan Phillippe's character.
Yeah, was that like one of the first gay characters in soap opera?
Well, I think technically Amanda Bierce was the first gay character. She was a lesbian on All My Children in the 1970s. But I think she might have been the first like series regular gay character, maybe.
Right. Yeah. I adore that vocabulary is part of, and I think it's why I sort of found my connection into A Strange Loop, because you create so many different openings for so many different groups of people. Like Usher is that everyman, but at the same time, it is the story of the Black queer man. Personally, mine was that like I love a little camp mixed with a little danger, and those elements were just they were interdependent on each other throughout that show. There was joy, there was revelation of space when you revealed like the Tyler Perry moment towards the end, and I'm just grateful to have you here. And the last thing I'm going to say is you are tomorrow on June 10th. This is coming out on June 11th, and I don't know if it's going to be available, but there are going to be excerpts of your musical adaptation of Teeth with the New York Theater Barn. And you and Anna K. Jacobs wrote that, and if you want to check it out, will it be available?
Yeah, I think you can just watch it on their YouTube channel.
What you shared just now with us and what you've been sharing, I think it's timely, and it's pointing to the problem. It's not, what are you binging? It's not, so like, what's it like homeschooling your 13 kids? No, it's like literally like, let's look at the structures that have socialized us to this point, and like, let's talk about that. And I
don't have any other power. I can ask a question.
Okay.
Amen, man.
That's my superpower, asking questions. That can be all of our superpowers if we want. Just ask questions and keep asking questions. Yeah. Question authority. Be a voice of dissent. Don't just accept what's right in front of you. Look underneath the hood. Don't jump on a bandwagon.
Question everything. I was emailing my Westchester representatives about, like, what are you guys going to do about this national crisis we're having. And I got an email back from the deputy executive representative, legislation deputy executive, and he was basically like, oh, we're doing this and we're putting together this task force and so on and so forth. And for every point he made, which was extremely condescending, by the way, I asked a question, every single one. And the email I got today was a lot more, we're looking into it, blah, blah, blah. And the sign off, instead of sincerely or best, it was stay safe. Yeah. And I was just like, the energy I think it took for me to, to ask the questions. I think it's a very important muscle to flex right now, asking the questions.
Yeah.
Not to clap back per se, which we were going to talk about clapping back, but I think you already kind of answered that.
Yeah.
You're really just asking questions. You're really just trying to get, why do you think that way? What system has put you there? So I just love your perspective, love your contribution.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And it was really nice to talk to both of you.
Pleasure.
We're gonna get through